And one of the questions people ask, like, how did you do it? And I said, hard work, discipline, and consistency. That is it. There's no life hack. There's no secret. I just did the work.
Thank you for tuning in to the Critical Conversations podcast, brought to you by Mind the Frontline. Established in 2023 as a 501c3, Mind the Frontline is your ally in the journey to support those who selflessly safeguard our communities. Their core mission revolves around pioneering innovation in research, education, and overall well-being, specifically tailored to healthcare, military, and public service frontline first responders. The Critical Conversation podcast is a dedicated space for police, fire, EMS, allied health workers, dispatchers, air medical, and military personnel, along with their families. Here, we dive into the heart of the matter, tackling essential topics such as mental health strategies, recovery methods, treatment options, the latest research, and professional development opportunities. Before we dive into today's episode on Critical Conversations, we do want to, however, acknowledge the nature of our discussions. Some of the content discussed may be triggering or intense as we explore the challenges and the triumphs within the first responder community. We recognize that these discussions may evoke strong emotions or memories. If you or someone you know is struggling and needs immediate support, we urge you to reach out to your agency's mental health resources or your local peer support group. In time of mental health crisis, you can always contact the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline by phone or via text at 988. Please remember you are never alone and help is always available. At Mind the Frontline, we are more than just a podcast. We are a community committed to fostering resilience within the entire first responder family. So whether you're on the front lines or supporting those who are, we invite you to subscribe, engage, and be a part of this vital mission. To learn more, please visit us at www.mindthefrontline.org. Now let's dive into today's critical conversation.
Welcome back, first responders and listeners and Mind the Frontline members. Welcome you to another episode of Critical Conversations by Mind the Frontline, the podcast that stands on the front line of all the first responders representing first responder mental health, wellness, and recovery. I'm your host, Chris Matana, a former firefighter and a flight paramedic, and I'm also the president of Mind the Frontline. And I'm still thrilled to have you guys join us today as we really kind of talk about trying to find a purpose. What is our purpose in life? Building resiliency through hard work, discipline, and consistency, because we know that without good routines and habits, things just kind of fall by the wayside. We have an incredible, powerful episode for you guys lined up today, featuring a fellow first responder. He's also a chief of Crescent Butte Fire District there in Colorado, but he brings a lot of good real life experience. Our guest today is Chief Robert Weisbaum. Chief Weisbaum is no stranger to challenges. Being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2022, he's transformed his life physically, mentally, and spiritually. Part of his new purpose includes inspiring and motivating first responders to learn and understand the impacts of the stress, the diseases, and the connection, as well as mind-body. Robert is a MS warrior, in my opinion. Let's go ahead and get to it. Robert, thank you so much for joining the show. We really appreciate it, sir. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the viewers and the listeners out there.
Hey, first, thanks so much, Chris, for having me here. It's an honor to be able to join your journey as we continue the path towards helping others, and I'm excited to be a part of it as well. So, as you heard, thank you for the introduction. My name is Rob Weisbaum. I'm the EMS and Fire Chief in Crescent Butte, Colorado, and been in the service for roughly 24 years. A lot of my story revolves around some pretty sentinel events that have happened in my life, and we'll kind of go into the weeds of this as we progress through the podcast. And I'm really excited to be able to share this story, as I have learned that the power of story can be so influential and can really help other people connect to their own struggles and adversity. And showing a level of vulnerability, I think, is critical to show and prove the importance of human connection. So kind of going just briefly into my background, I'm going to go back a little bit to my childhood. And I grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, mother, father, and sister. And I was very fortunate enough to start early on into martial arts when I was 5 years old. And I think a lot of the things that I've learned and progressed through life with is understanding the values that I learned through Taekwondo along with my family. And one of the big things when I finally came to finding my reason of being on this planet was discovering my love for helping other people. And when I went to university initially after high school, I just was not motivated. I was doing the normal thing, having fun. I was distracted, and I was kind of lost and distracted with what I should be doing, what I
Chasing
want to do.
girls.
Yeah, all the things, just having fun. And it really took one person that kind of grabbed my attention and randomly asked if I was ever interested in the fire service. And, I don't remember who this firefighter was, and I don't remember a lot of the details of it, but I never thought about it. And I said, tell me more about this. And he said, well, I would recommend you to find an EMT course first, go through that, and then start applying for a fire service if that's what you want. And so I immediately looked for an EMT class, enrolled in it, fell in love immediately. And I kind of went from that zero to hero. Prior to completing my course, I asked my instructor if I could register for the paramedic class, the accelerated paramedic class that's going to start shortly after. And I was so confident. I said, don't worry, I'm going to pass the exam. You don't have to worry about that. Just let me sign up for paramedic class. And he allowed me to do it. And I was very thankful for that. And so I went right into paramedic school. And during paramedic school, I was working as an EMT. What I really loved about it was the fact that I was able to help others. And I owe a lot of that to the mentors and the people I was surrounded by that really showed me what it meant to be compassionate, caring, and be in the profession, understanding that our sole duty is to help others. And that has defined my career for my entire life as a paramedic, firefighter, and emergency responder. So early on, as I'm progressing through my career, I was an avid skydiver, working on getting my professional, just Class A license, which is kind of the beginner level. And I've always been an adrenaline junkie. And
Aren't
one
we
day,
all that get into the fire
we
service for
are,
public
right?
safety? I mean, we're all type A, kind of. I want to help others. I want to be of service. So I get that. I understand that.
Yeah, it's and the feeling you get, you just want to replicate it over and over and over again. And what really helped me progress through life and get to where I'm at today is I was doing the second jump of my day, made a bad mistake, took a low turn. Long story short, I lawn darted into the ground, roughly 60 miles an hour. And when
Hmm.
I hit the ground, I kind of did a quick check over. I said, wow, I'm alive. Okay, that's good. And ouch, this really hurts. And, I was just kind of laying down on the ground, and I sit up and I go and look down at my legs, and all I see is bone and blood. And keep in mind, I'm a paramedic, so I fully understand the
Not
severity of
bad
this
off.
and what's happening. Yeah. And I'm in the North 40
I've been there. I remember that as I was flying off my motorcycle, probably doing like cartwheels through the air, and I remember impacting the ground. And when I took that first breath and I opened my eyes, it's the same thing. I'm alive, but ouch.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it's it's so bad that you can't even register it. But I remember waiting for help to show up, and the master jumper came, ran over to me. His eyes popped out. He says, "Ah!" And he runs away. I said, "Please don't leave." And he goes, "I got to call 911." So he leaves. Fire rescue comes there. EMS. Everybody shows up. And I'm kind of that guy. I'm the paramedic. I'm saying, hey, I don't typically do this, but I am a paramedic, and but I'll let you do your job, of course, right? We always want to look out
Yeah, it's the
for
infamous
ourselves.
infamous line, right? Like,
Yeah,
hey, I don't want to tell you to do your job, but I'm also a firefighter paramedic too,
right.
and maybe we should do this, maybe we should do that. But I'm not going to judge you or tell you how to do it. Yeah, we're the worst
Yeah,
patients, aren't we?
for sure. Yeah, and so once I really understood the severity of this, they called in a helicopter crew, and I remember when the helicopter crew came in, one, everybody was fantastic. the way they communicated with me, the way they treated me, the care they provided, bar none, amazing. And that further solidified why I love this profession. And so I got flown to University of Michigan Hospital, long surgery, almost lost one of my legs. They were able to save it kind of at the last minute. And that was the road to recovery. So I have all my follow-up appointments. And I remember one of the big defining moments is one of the orthopedic fellows told me, hey, forget about being a paramedic firefighter. That job is done. Time to move on. You are just probably not going to heal from this. And the fractures were so bad, the damage was so bad, the nerve damage was bad. And I kind of looked at him in shock and awe, and I said, is this normal bedside manner? I said, because you're telling me that I can't do something. And immediately I did not accept that. And that really set stone to I can allow a diagnosis, but I will never let somebody give me a prognosis. And when I say that is you can say something, but you're not going to dictate what my outcome is. And I fully understand that there are cases out there and there are a lot of patients and there are things where things are irreversible, right? People will die, people, succumb to disease, and it's terrible and it's tragic. In
But
my
you weren't going to
case,
let this end your career. I remember
correct.
laying on, yeah, when I had my back injury, which kind of propelled me to, start up IA Med, the former training company I used to own. Same thing. I had that back injury, and it was my second really bad one. And they're like, hey, Chris, like, you need to start looking at other line of work. I don't think you'll ever be able to practice as a paramedic again. And okay, 2 years later, guess who's back? So I can relate to that. I don't let people, dictate my outcome if I still have control or the will to stand up for that.
Yeah, it's and that's the key component is really not letting other people dictate your outcome in your future. You can take full control of that. And it's not easy, and I don't propose that it'll be easy. Never will be, and it's not supposed to be. But let's fast forward now 20 plus years. I became a chief in 2000 ish, I believe. And at that time, I really got into the job understanding that I was lacking qualifications. I was given the trust that maybe I could develop into this role. And I'm so grateful and thankful for that, understanding it was going to be a huge uptaking. And so I really dedicated a lot of my life to just trying to figure out my leadership style, what it means to lead an organization, and know that as long as I'm sticking to my value system and I'm doing what's right, something that's not unethical, illegal, or immoral, stay on the right path, and eventually people will follow, or hopefully they will at least. And during that
Doing
time,
the
during
right thing
those,
for the right reason.
right,
People don't pick that up. It just takes time. There's to be authentic, and be authentic, and kind of dive down into something where you're like, hey, this is new to me. It's a challenge. It's unfamiliar territory or waters, but hey, I'm going to tackle this. I'm going to find a way through this.
yeah. And, I would say throughout that time, without question, I've made mistakes. I'm human. I make errors. I have emotions, and I failed a lot. The lesson learned, though, is it's okay to fail. It's just not okay to stay in that state of mind, right? So when you make mistakes, you learn from them and you develop and grow upon those mistakes. And that's what life is. And I really neglected myself with self-care and self-love. And I've always kind of been a go it alone guy. I look out for myself. I make sure that if I want something done, I do it. And I learned that that's not always the right thing to do in certain circumstances, but I also know that I know who I am as a person and what needs to get done uh, needs, ultimate focus for myself. During this time, what happened was I just started gaining weight. I wasn't paying attention to it. I'm under an enormous amount of stress. And we're talking consistent, continual stress, day in and day out. My sleep patterns are poor.
Hmm.
I'm not happy. There's expectations of me that I should be perceived a certain way. I should react a certain way. And I certainly have let emotion get in my way. I have run away from those emotions and I didn't have good control over them. And that was reflected in people that I led and people surrounded by me. And I definitely kind of, I won't say ignored it, but I didn't take the weight of it, of how important that was, understanding what my role is. So before I know it, now I'm 298 pounds, just shy of 300 pounds, the heaviest I've ever been in my life. And during that time, nobody had said, "Wow, Rob, are you okay? Are you what's going on? You're getting pretty heavy, and are things okay?" And periodically, someone might throw a little thing in there, but never outright calling that out to me. And I get it. It's hard to do when you're in a leadership position or even a friend. Do you want to do that out of fear of,
Do you want to be
uh,
that person? It's like,
right?
hey, you look heavier. No, I'm just pregnant,
Yeah,
jackass. Like, oh,
right.
my
Yeah,
bad. Yeah, trust me, I've only made that mistake once in my paramedic career, and I'd never made it. And, but yeah, I mean, what do you do? Do you speak up? Do you say, hey, I'm just kind of concerned about your health and your well-being? I know you're typically a fit guy, and it looks like you might have uh, taken, fitness is kind of taking a back seat, I guess. Yeah, obviously there's a lot of tact, but at the same time, there's a lot of
yeah,
fear for the person who's delivering it.
yeah. Absolutely, and you got to do it wisely. And so this leads up to November of 2021, a very stressful time. One of my firefighters had just committed suicide, and that rocked us. Didn't see it coming, and for me personally, I felt as if I failed hugely because I didn't recognize any signs. I didn't see it. And I said, where did I go wrong? What did I do? And I started taking some of that blame upon myself and understanding that I know the blame's not to be placed on me. These are individual, crises. And, well, all right, what can I do? What do I need to do for this? And in a very quick span of time, what also happened was my father, he had been diagnosed with Parkinson's at that time for 12 years, and his quality of life has just been on the decline. He was on hospice care at the time, and he really progressed, for the worse over the 12 years, and unfortunately, he didn't want to battle the disease. He kind of let the disease define who he was, rather than defining what the disease is for him. And so that was a challenge within our family. And for those who have, been a part of a family dynamic where you have somebody going through these struggles, it can cause a lot of internal struggles within the family itself. Just meeting the challenges of trying to help and convince people, hey, let's really try to work hard at this and combat it so you can get the best quality of life. And so shortly after that, I come home from a regular day of work and stress is high, lots weighing on my shoulders. I come home and I start feeling a little bit of pain in my left eye. Don't think anything about it. And I'm kind of just going through the regular daily routine of what I've been doing for the last 5, 6 years. And
Hmm.
I start to go to sleep and the pain's increasing. I start noticing my vision start to get darker and darker, almost like someone's pulling a dark shade over my left eyeball. And so now I'm starting to actually get a little bit scared. And I'm like,
Red
what is
flags are
going?
finally like big enough and loud enough that as a medic that you're like, okay, maybe I'm
Yeah.
not going to sleep this one off.
Yeah. And the really odd thing, and I have no idea where this came from, but early on in my career, in my life, I said, if I ever lose my vision or if I lose one of my arms or legs, I don't want to live as a human being. I don't want to be on this planet anymore. And I made this weird contract with myself. And I have no reason behind that. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I've always been an athlete my whole life. I've had that freedom of doing all these things. And so when I started losing my vision, it kind of started making me think about that. I said, oh gosh, What's going to happen? All right, well, let's just relax. I go to the mirror, check my eyes, and I'm like, maybe I got some eye boogers or something that's just kind of coating it, and let me clean it off. And so that didn't work. Nothing was there. And I decided, let's go to sleep. Let's wake up in the morning and see what happens. So I wake up in the morning, and now my vision has completely darkened, about 50% down through my field of vision, and I'm worried. So I ask my boss. I said, "Hey, I need help. I need a ride down to the ophthalmologist or optometrist." And I called them up and said, "Hey, can you get me in real quick?" And so they said, "Yep, come on down. Let's take a look at you." Go to the optometrist. Go in there. He does his tests. He goes through the little globe scanner, and he goes, "Rob, your eyes are beautiful. They look great. I suggest you go over to the ER and ask for an MRI." I said, "Wait, what?" He goes, "I suggest you go to the ER and ask for an MRI." Okay. And so, okay. So I go across the street, go to the ER. And of course, I'm met by everybody I know, right? Friends, coworkers, colleagues, people that we've been close to. It's a small hospital in our community. And
Everybody
it kind of
knows
goes,
you. They're like, "Hey, Rob, how's it going? You just coming in to say hi?" You're like, "No, actually, I have an issue, and I
yeah,
need to be a patient." I've
yeah,
walked through those doors, man. That's a scary moment. Not gonna
yeah.
lie.
And right. And the biggest thing for me was the unknown. And so as I'm kind of describing my symptoms to them, it's not common from what I've learned to just be able to go and get an MRI. And, speaking with the doctor, you go, yeah, let's order an MRI. So I'm there for hours. They have to do all their normal routine, 12 lead EKGs, lab work, check everything. And
Bunch
one
of
of the
rule
things that
outs.
rule outs, exactly. Yeah. And one of the things that came back on my lab work that I've always noticed, I've always had an elevated white count for many, many years, 14, 15,000. It's always kind of hovered there, but it's always been discounted. Oh, okay, well, maybe it's just normal for you, not a big deal. So I
Maybe
get my
just run a
MRI.
little higher on your WBCs, man. It's totally good.
Right.
You hear an
Yeah,
affection fighting machine out there.
totally. Yeah. So yeah, I get the MRI read. They come back and he goes, "Hey, we're going to order a second MRI." I said, "Oh gosh, what did you find?" He goes, "Let's just get a second look, a second MRI." I said, "Doc, you got to tell me what you found." He goes, "Just hang in there." And I'm like, this is destroying me inside. I am now in full freak out mode. Did you find a brain tumor? Did you find something indicative of cancer? What did you find? And they wouldn't budge.
Yeah, if they're doing number
Um,
two and he doesn't want to tell you, like, were you there alone? Were you all by
I,
yourself at the hospital, or
I had my colleague there with me here and there. I ended up being there for 7 or 8 hours or so. I was there for a long time. But yeah, more or less, I was alone. And so, the staff would come in, they just talk with me a little bit, chit chat, and I got to catch up with them. But inside, I'm having this internal conversation of just, what's happening? What am I going to do? And when they came back with the second results and said, "Hey, all right, so this is where we're at. We found 15 lesions throughout your brain. It looks like it might be multiple sclerosis. Let's set you up with a neurologist." And I'm
and you were probably thinking stroke, cancer,
yeah,
tumor. So honestly, if I
yeah,
could be just raw, man, like when you heard the diagnosis of MS, did that bring any relief up until that point? Because I would be thinking, hey, I got a tumor, and I know what brain tumors do. Like, you know, what
yeah.
was your
So
thought in that moment?
interestingly enough, it gave me the opposite moment because
Okay.
um, a friend of the family, a professor from the University of Michigan by the name of Phil. I remember when I was an early paramedic, early in my career, he had got diagnosed with primary progressive MS, the most aggressive form of MS.
Yeah.
And it was back then. This was not 20 something years ago. They're still trying to understand it, still learn what the disease is. And he was doing experimental treatments, getting infusions shipped over from Germany. And I would go there and talk with him, help him. And I remember when he got his diagnosis, within a year and a half, he was in a wheelchair. And within 5 years, he was dead. So when they told me
So that's
that,
what you had as a vision.
that's exactly what I had. And I wasn't too familiar with MS as a whole, other than I know Phil, and this was his path. My timeline just started. I got 5 years to go live life. And it was such a difficult moment to say, what am I going to do next? All right. And what do you do with information like that? And so they said, well, let's get you set up with a neurologist. And the next part was, all right, a neurologist is available in 6 to 8 months. I said, no, I can't make that. I won't survive. I don't want to live if that's the case. I cannot go 6 to 8 months not knowing what this is. And
Yeah.
and through the grace of whatever's up there, God, whoever you believe in, doesn't matter, and good friends, they had connections that were able to get me into a neurologist within a couple weeks. And I think the world
That's when
intervenes when
you're
it,
loving the fact that you're a paramedic and a fire chief. I'm sure because I had a friend that also had to go into a neurologist. Same story. Like you're looking at months, 6 to 8 months is about
yeah,
typical right now. It's just
yeah,
crazy. So
yeah,
and I couldn't even imagine like living that thought in my head for 8 months. Like that would just it would be a really big mountain to climb. And so having your friends rally behind you and get you in sooner, then that's awesome.
and it's scary. And so knowing that I have an appointment coming up, which is great, they said, hey, we should have you report over the next 3 days. We're going to give you high dose IV steroids to help with the inflammation. It's not going to actually recover your vision, but it'll stop it from being damaged further. So, okay, sweet. Let's do this. I want to try to get my vision back. And so I started reporting to the hospital for morning infusions. And one of the things that I haven't shared a lot with people, and this is why it's so important to really strengthen your mind during your darkest times, is um, shortly after my last infusion, about day 1, day 2 after that, I was in a really, really dark place. And to the point where I had written out a full plan. I was, and this is
It's
the
okay.
place where I get, it's, let me just gather myself for a second.
Absolutely. I can imagine.
Yeah. Well,
Me being in my own
the
dark space, it's been very hard, and
yeah,
to get to that place where you've kind of just accepted the fact that you're rolling over and you're going to die. I mean, I got there, I didn't
yeah,
pull the trigger, thank goodness, but
yeah.
it's a,
You know,
it's a, it's a scary place. Dark.
yeah, very scary. And it's the crazy part about it is it's like, oh, I won't get emotional over this. I've gotten so tough, but of course it's an emotional thing. And so I had written out a plan. I was ready to do it. And interesting enough, I said it a little bit ago. The world interjects when it needs to, exactly right when it needs to. And as I'm kind of working through this, and I'm ready to leave this planet, I think about how that will impact others, more specifically my family. And the crazy part that I really can't, truly explain is I have this really overall body sense of warmth, right? And with that warmth came the feeling of actual love. And I think in the first time in my life, I knew what it meant to love. And I definitely relate that to my family. And that was the point where the flip switched. I said, absolutely not. This isn't going to be my life. I have a purpose. I am here for a reason, just as everybody in this world is here for a reason. Whether or not you can identify that, that's another story, but there are ways to try to find it. So then I made the commitment to myself to say, I'm going to use this for a positive. I'm going to turn it around, and I'm going to do everything in my power to live the best life that I can live, be the best version of myself, one, and then two, use that to help others. Because I'm a firm believer that we have to give more than what we take in this world. That is why we're here. It's human biology. And we have to have human connection. And one of my biggest fears
Absolutely.
that I see is we're losing human connection because of technology. And one of the gifts that I think I have is one, long suffering. I've been, I'm great at suffering. It's just a part of life, and I've accepted that pain and suffering is a part of life, but I can't live in that state. So, um, I made that commitment to change and kind of start this path forward in really identifying what my new purpose in life is, because I already knew what my initial purpose is to help others, to be in this career, this profession. But now that I have put so much time and effort into me, I'm at a point in my life where I'm comfortable with who I am, where I've become, and now I want to help others in hopes that I can help them, influence them if they want that too. At the end of the day, this is a very important lesson that I learned is I can't change people's behavior. Nobody can change anybody's behavior. They want to have to want
Close.
it themselves, right? But through storytelling and sharing, you know, vulnerable moments like this, all it takes is one person. If I can impact one person at a time, it's worth every bit of effort.
Well, Chief, I mean, so you've said so much good, inspiring things there. I want to kind of maybe take a step back just a minute, but you talked about that switch being flipped, right? Um, I remember that moment. I remember, and this is raw. I don't think I've actually shared this on any of the podcasts or to anybody yet. So, your vulnerability has inspired me to be more vulnerable. So thank you in that first and foremost and sharing that
Yeah.
hard story. When I walked out of the behavioral hospital that I've been pretty much entrapped in for 10 days, because once you get in there, it is absolute hell, or at least it was for me. I wanted to leave, and they held the threat of, well, if I leave AMA, then I'm going to be stuck with the full bill. That's what they do to you. I spoke with a therapist maybe, and it wasn't even the actual therapist, it was a student. A total of probably 30 or 40 minutes in the entire 10 days I was there. It was more about getting me to go to these little group procedures. Don't get me wrong, there's some good values in that. Giving me meds, but really there was no actual mental health treatment in that facility for 10 days. It was an absolute hell. And I had made a promise to myself that I had two things. I think I kind of came to this realization on day 8. It was I could either choose to walk out of this facility and do it right and call it a day, because I had always up until that point thought that by being, going and seeking out help and treatment, things like that, things would get better. They got worse. Like I thought I was in a hole that was dark. I didn't think it could get I didn't think the dark could get any darker. And it did. And in that moment, I remember that switch being flipped, because really, it's truthfully, if you haven't been there, you just won't be able to relate. You can comprehend to some degree, but you just won't relate to this feeling. I made the decision to live, because right before that, I had made the decision to leave this world, leave my wife, my kids, everything else that I had behind, and say, I can't bear it anymore, and I'm out. I gave up. And by the grace of Almighty, and this part everybody does know, is the fact that, having that snowcat come along at 2:30 in the morning or whenever it was, very early, and stumble upon me, which prevented me from actually following through with the final motion, which was I had already dried fire. I'd already worked through it. Just working that final couple of steps there, you
Yeah.
know. And to get to that point, it takes a lot, but to actually say, hey, I'm going to take my life back. I'm going to take control of this shit. I'm not going to give up. I'm not dead. I'm going to fight. I had that switch flip, and man, it was like feeling like you've been underneath the water for 40 minutes, drowning, and you take that first breath for the first time. It's the empowering feeling I have of that. I have to remind myself over and over again, because it's one of those savory moments, but you still have some dark times. You still have some challenges ahead of you. But having that switch flip and go, I'm going to now be of service of others. I'm going to help others. What was done to me was not right, and I'm going to make a difference, instead of saying, you know what, I could have just been like, all right, you guys just kick me while I'm down. Like nobody would guess or thought. But when I walked out of that facility on day 10, I had my wife, I had Portia, my service dog, which they would not let me have while I was in treatment because they said they could provide everything that my service dog could do, which is complete horse shit. But
Yeah.
I got to see my wife, my dog, and my two kids, and at that moment, like it just happened to be a nice day. Sun was kind of shining a little bit. Sounds very melodramatic, but it wasn't then. But it really ingrained into me that this is a mission, and I'm accepting it. I'm not giving it up. It's not something that anything else in life that is drawing me towards this. This is me and my mission to go out there and make a difference however I can. And so you telling your story, man, is a lot of power. A lot of power. Hopefully it gets easier for you as it has for me. But I haven't shared that with anybody. I haven't really told anybody like what was my moment where I decided I wanted to live. Because for everybody else that's out there, if you are struggling, you feel like you're in that dark place, you have a decision to make. You can either flip that switch or you can leave it off. And I can tell you when you leave it off, I know where it goes. It's where all my friends have gone. Not all of them, but a good many of them. I've lost too many freaking friends in this industry, Chief. And so your resiliency, and then you mentioned the other thing, that human connection, and we're losing it through technology. I want to kind of hit on that real quick because we are, study after study have shown like actual human connection, meaning physical touch, interaction. I can grab you on the shoulder, hey, give you a pat on the back, hug you, feel that, smell you, it sounds awkward, but no, like all of that has been shown that we as humans need that to thrive, mentally, physically, and emotionally. Our psyche, is intertwined with everything else that we do throughout our day. And so I would agree that technology is taking it away. I try to do FaceTimes because I don't have, a lot of time, but it's not the same as going down the street or, hanging out in my basement playing GoldenEye or, throwing darts. It's not the same. And so, I hear you and I see you. And thank you so much for the power in sharing that story. What do you, I mean, where did you go from there though? You finally decide like, hey, I'm going to make this my mission in life. I have a purpose. That's
Yep.
enlightening. What did you do with it?
Yeah. First, thanks for being vulnerable and sharing that, your moment. This is what it's all about, right? Being able to talk to each other and open up about that. And that truly is what makes this so great, is just one person at a time and be able to connect like that. When I flipped that switch, I didn't really buy into a lot of spirituality and hope and belief and what I'll call buzzwords, purpose and all these things. And what I really want to try to identify and get away from is having these words just be words. So how do I actually put this all into action? And by chance, during this moment when the light flipped on and I'm like, I'm going to tackle this, I'm going to go full bore, I'm going to change my life for the better and get healthy, I was listening to a podcast, and it's just Daily Motivation by Motiversity. And
Yep,
one of the
I
episodes,
watch that on YouTube every morning, Chief. That's crazy. That's one of the
it,
things I did right after I decided to live. I cannot
yeah,
believe that. That's crazy.
yeah, and it was an episode by Coach Payne, and he's out of Arizona, and something he said resonated so deep with me. I said, time to get to work. It's time to start taking action. And, so I got really immersed into educating myself and reading and studying and looking and saying, all right, how am I going to do this day in and day out, knowing that these aren't instant results? This takes time to build upon, and results aren't going to show for a long time. Here's the secret: you just have to start. Once you start something, then you can keep going. And once you keep going, you could build a habit. And once you build that habit, it becomes second nature, right? That's that consistency piece to it. You also have to really reinvent yourself more or less. And, throughout life, it's okay to reinvent yourself, who you are as a person, and say, yep, this is who I was in the past. This is who I am now. And one of the things that I really appreciate about this journey that I've been on is really understanding who I am not as a person, but also getting to discover who I am as a person. And understanding that that's a lifelong journey until my resting days, who I am. And those are things that I'll continue to develop. So as I'm kind of looking for good material to read, good things to study, get back in touch with my spiritual side. My dad was a Buddhist. I always kind of practiced Zen Buddhism. Through martial arts, we would meditate every single day. We would really reflect back on our values and see how that correlates to our everyday life. And I said, oh, guess what? It's also time to get to the gym. And just like the last podcast I heard from you is with the doc, physical fitness, movement is so critical to getting healthy and well. And it's amazing what it does to our mindset and how good you feel after you just start movement. And so I started running. And one of the things that I identified how strong our mindset actually is, when I broke my legs, my ankles fused together. So I have no extension flexion. They're fixed. It's fixed. And so I convinced myself for many years that I couldn't run because it's simply too painful. And I just couldn't get that mechanism right. And I said, let's give this a whirl. So I get to the firehouse gym. I hop on the treadmill and let's start jogging. Okay, I'm going to start jogging. I do it for a little bit, maybe half a mile. I said, okay, that hurts. Let me focus on every single step that I'm taking. Let me try to make corrective motions so that it's not as impactful or hurtful. And let's just keep going with this. And as I continue to do this every single day, every day, I might miss a day. I committed to doing 6 days a week. I would consistency. Yeah. I would progressively increase my speed and my length. And I found myself within, roughly 4 to 6 months of being able to run distance, 3-5 miles at, in my opinion, a respectable pace for someone with busted legs. So, I'd run an 8-9 minute mile consistently for 3 to 5
Are
5 miles.
Are you kidding me? Like that's what I run like at 8:30 when I did my like last half marathon. So you're crushing me, Chief.
Yeah.
By far. So don't sell yourself short. But at the same
Oh,
time,
thank you.
you, you mentioned a lot of things there, and I want to kind of back up just a minute on just one of those things that I thought was a lot of power. It's the fact of Navy SEALs have a saying. You take how do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time.
Yep.
I can tell you when I came out of that treatment center after 10 days, like life and everything looked extremely overwhelming. That was my elephant, right? Legs were, home life. The other leg was work life. However you want to look at it, you can envision that as I'm talking. But essentially, you just need to start on a single bite. Start on one leg. Start on one bite and just do. By just doing and putting your foot in front of the other. And I love how you were like, this used to be a challenge to me. I'm going to take this mental freaking kicking I'm on, and I'm going to kick some butt, and I'm going to try some new things. I'm not going to, hey, what was holding me back? Because fear, I feel like, and some of my own self-discovery, right? Like I had to go back and look at some of my character defects and things like that, but I've really had to look at fear and what fear does to me to try to sabotage my resiliency, to try to sabotage my progress, or inhibit me from even starting something in the first place. And so, the fact that and you had some legitimate concerns there. Hell, you freaking buckled your knees and both your legs, from a skydiving accident at 60 miles an hour. Why would you want to try to do something you absolutely know is going to cause you pain? You're like, it's like saying, hey, I know this is going to hurt and I'm going to do it anyways. That mental fortitude, talk about building mental toughness. Damn. You're going after it.
Yeah. And during this, I really focused a lot of effort onto that because there are a lot of things that happened in my life that I would take personally. And that weakened me a lot. And I understood the importance of building that mental toughness and that armor that you talked about in a previous episode. We got to build upon that armor. Um, you know, I get to a point now where I will not let people hurt me. They can't hurt me. I've built this for myself, but I can also be very empathetic, sympathetic, all the things, and be that compassionate person. But deep down inside, I will never let someone else hurt me again, and not take things personally. And I think it's critical for us to be able to build those foundations so that we can truly be the best version of ourselves and live the life we want to live. And one of the questions someone asked me as I started seeing results and seeing the weight loss happen, FYI, I've lost 110 pounds to this day. And one of the questions people ask, like, how did you do it? And I said, hard work, discipline, and consistency. That is it. There's no life hack. There's no secret. I just did the work. And,
It's
it
funny because at
sucks.
Crash and Learn, I had someone ask me like, "Hey, Chris, man, you look like you lost a lot of weight. What did you do?" I said, "I stopped drinking alcohol."
Yeah.
Well, it's consistency work. Trust me, for someone who enjoys a good whiskey sour or a Manhattan,
Right.
especially a good old fashioned, man, smoked.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
I miss those. But yeah, I
Yeah.
just stopped drinking them. But
Yeah.
consistency, I had to stay
Yeah.
after it. I had to be resilient. I had to work for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the reality of it is it's not meant to be easy. None of this is meant to be easy. And you can listen to all these other speakers, and it's true. You listen to Goggins, you listen to Jocko, you listen to
Uh,
a wider range. And I listen to
Ryan
the most
Holiday, I'll throw in
intense,
there.
yeah, Holiday. And so during this journey, I've listened to these people who are pretty intense and have awesome messages. But then I also listen to people like Leslie Nichols. I listen to Joe Dispenza, who talks about neuroscience and neurobiology. And you really get both ends of it. And you begin to understand how powerful this is right here. And, through strength and conditioning of your mind, you can truly achieve anything you want. Not going to be easy, not meant to be, but if you want it, you can do it. New mission of mine of really identifying what purpose is and what my purpose is. It breaks down in categories. What are we actually trying to do? What am I trying to do in trying to inspire other people? So it's been a lot of fun, and I truly hope that I can make a big impact on this world because there's 1,000 quotes out there that I love. But one of the things that I like to think about, Warren Buffett said in one of his speeches to a group of entrepreneurs or students, and he references a car and he says, "Hey, um, tomorrow morning I'm going to deliver any car that you want with a bull wrapped in it into your driveway." And they said, "Wow, that's really kind of you, Mr. Buffett. What's the catch around this?" And he goes, "The catch is it's the only car that you'll get for the rest of your life. So understanding that, what are you going to do with that car?" "Well, I'm going to take immaculate care of it. I'm going to change the oil. I'm going to make sure everything's greased and lubed, and I'm going to, keep it in pristine, condition." He goes, "All right, sweet. Now take this perspective." He goes, "Obviously, this isn't going to happen, but let's switch that car with you as a person, as a human. Why wouldn't you do that for yourself, right? You get one life. You don't get another chance. This is one shot. So why would you not want to live the best way you know how and take the best care of you can?" It's challenging, but it's a good little metaphor, and I
It's
love it.
always a
I love it.
challenge though. Everybody, my whole life, I was an athlete in high school, right? So I had a really good work ethic. Sorry, 2-a-days, early mornings, Saturdays, just practice. And when you're dual sport, you're doing 3 to 4 practices a day. It's crazy. But, I've also let myself go. But I also know that, like, by consistency, like when I get myself and I walk back into the gym, which I told you before we got on this, like it's been about 3 weeks since I've been in the gym just because I've been on a grind. But it's also like why I love doing these episodes and doing some of my other tools and routines that I do for my mental health because they remind me, with my self awareness and that switch being flipped, like my perspective on life is obviously shifted and it's continually dynamic, I would say. But it allows me to kind of look at things and go, okay, yeah, Chris, like, yeah, you don't look so great, you don't feel so healthy, but you could either choose to keep doing what you're doing, or you could choose that, hey, I'm going to take today and I'm going to be a little bit more kinder to my body. I'm going to be a little bit more nicer on my diet. And if I keep stacking those days, which is what I love, one of the things we say to newcomers in AA, we say, hey, hope you stack those chips, man. Just keep coming back. That's all you got to do. All you got to do is just
Yeah,
keep coming back and keep stacking chips. And before you know it, you got metal, which is 1 year. It's
yeah,
crazy. It's crazy how
yeah,
if we could just get in that mindset. And I also kind of, you mentioned the fitness aspect. I just switched over to a plant-based diet. Once again, I think as you start getting older, like hell, I just turned 40. I'm over the hill now. Like statistically, I'm at a high risk for a lot of things. I don't drink anymore, but I picked up smoking, which ain't so great. And there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things. I start thinking about cancer. My dad's going through a little bit of a scare right now. I've been through a scare myself, and I have friends. And to
Yeah.
see them just tomorrow, you never know what you have tomorrow. I think we take too much for granted, and we let fear kind of drive our car for us, so to speak, because hey, I'm fearful of failing. And I would say that probably if you really get to the root of that, of why you've given up on something, it's probably either you just lost your will to keep going forward, or you basically became fearful of, I think I'm gonna fail. I don't think I'm gonna be able to hang this. And what you really do find in the power of resiliency, and I've also found, by sleeping and working out, all these things that I'm able to incorporate in my routine. If I want Chris firing on all five, 6, whatever cylinders you want to call them, I need to feed my body well. I need to sleep well. I need to do self-care. I need to go work out. I have to have a good work-life balance. I have to work on my anxiety. I have to meditate. You just have to do these things, right? Like they're just not gonna. You're not taking a secret pill, but you have to put it into work. I think people get scared of work. They shy away from it. And what I would tell people is, it's just like starting out any kind of weight loss routine, exercise routine, physical activity. It takes time. The first couple of times are going to hurt. They're going to suck, but it's getting through the suck, and getting through the other side, because then it gets easier and easier, and you just start feeling better. Life's happier. You don't have to take as many freaking, SSRIs. You just by doing these little things and getting out, like it really does just change your life. But the thing is the fear of some people might have when they listen to this episode is, well, where do I start? It's overwhelming. No, it's just taking a bite of that elephant's toe instead of taking a bite of the elephant's leg or the elephant in itself. Like, you just got to start small.
Yeah, it's I think in my opinion, the most dangerous place to be is in a place of convenience and comfort. And and the reality is a majority of the people on this planet live just like that. And I would challenge people to realize, if you want to be better and to live the best life that you can, understand that you got to put in the work. And it's okay. It's not a scary thing to do. It just takes more effort. The reality is, I love, Simon Sinek, and he talks about, what's your why? Why are you
Yeah.
here? And one of the things that I like to ask people is, ask yourself, why are you here on this planet? Like, and that's a deep question. That's very complex. And I
You know
can
what's
promise
really
you,
easy for everybody that's listening to this, because it might be like, oh man, I don't want to go through that list. It's really easy. If you've never heard of Ikigai, one of my mentors, Sal, turned me on to it, and I went through and Ikigai the shit out of my life. I took like the 10 things that were going, and I put them all into Ikigai. Purpose. Does it fulfill me? Does it provide me financial stability? Like, if you start using some of these tools, it makes it not so scary, because guess what?
yeah,
Like, it's just right here. All I gotta do is
yeah,
like, oh, okay, it only meets, and I apply that, and that's how I've learned how to set boundaries now and say no to additional projects or things that I want to undertake. It's like, does it meet 3 out of the 4 criteria even to be considered? Because if it only meets 2, then it's an automatic, out the door. And man, I actually felt a lot less stressful, Rob. I'll tell you that much. When Sal told me and told me that, I was like, "Oh man, I just do this 4 little things and that's it." Yeah, it took
yes,
the stress out of making hard life decisions, and it just
yeah.
made it a little bit easier if I put it on somebody else.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I love that you brought that up because, I really love that philosophy. And just for the listeners, so the 4 components of Ikigai is identifying what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs right now, and what you can get paid for. And another thing that I recently read, um, is identifying the 4 F's, right? So, this is what really helps create it's happiness, joy, fulfillment in life, is family, friends, finance, and really finding out what your purpose is. It's the 4 pillars. And by working on those 4 pillars, you can try to find a path towards fulfillment. And I've definitely said this to other people is, they'll ask, "Are you happy?" I said, "I don't chase happiness. I chase fulfillment." Right?
Mhm.
I delay gratification for the long-term fulfillment of my life, which means I have to make sacrifices. I might have to give up certain things, understanding that at the end of the day, when my time is up, I want to leave a lasting impact on this world in a positive nature. I do not want to go to my grave with regret. And one of the favorite quotes I hear from Jim Rohn is, the weight of discipline far weighs less than the weight of regret, right? Discipline weighs ounces, regret weighs tons. And they've done studies in the elderly population towards their end of life, and they ask about fulfillment and how their life is. And a large percentage of people on their dying bed are filled with regret because they wish they had done something differently early on. So this is where I challenge people, take risks. It's okay. And you're going to fail. But what you
And that's
do with
okay
those
too.
failures, yeah, and what you fail, how you respond to those failures will actually define who you are as a person, and that will help you grow as a person. And that's where this growth mindset comes in. Really challenging yourself, knowing that it's okay to make mistakes, you find a different way to do it next time. Kind of the science part of it, and we won't go into science because other people have already spoken about it, but Andrew Huberman did a recent podcast and he talks about the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. And there's 2 little things in our brain, and that helps define willpower, what grit is. And one of the things that helps strengthen that is doing things you don't like to do,
Challenging
right?
yourself, stepping outside of your
Challenging.
comfort zone. Like you
Exactly.
said, if you're feeling comfortable, yeah, you're probably in complacent land. Personally, that's what I've come to feel like. Hey, if I feel comfortable
Yep.
and I don't have like at least a little bit of stress or some eustress going on, which is the good stress, then I'm actually not doing myself a service. I'm actually doing myself a disservice. And that's why
Yep.
it does. You got to get out there. You got to challenge yourself. You got to get open to failure.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of going down the journey a little bit. I'll talk a little bit about the steps of finding purpose and what it actually looks like. And what is my day? Because I want to give actionable items. I want to say, hey, I know this works for me. It might not work for everybody. But one of the things that I found is really important is we have to eliminate the noise and the negative. There is so much in this world and external forces that are trying to inject disgusting, nasty things into our brains through politics, social media, you name it, gossip, all the
All media
things,
at
all
this
mean. I mean,
point.
it's bad, right? So
It's just a bunch of
one,
noise. I mean, it steals your brain power. It steals your focus. It takes you away from your ikigai. What's bringing me purpose? How can I be of service in this life? And that's what it's meant to do. Everybody is spending millions and anywhere from thousands of millions of dollars to try to get your attention.
yeah,
I love how you put notifications because that was one of the things one of my mentors told me is kill off all your notifications, bro. Then there's no
yeah,
noise,
right,
decrease that stuff so you can be a little bit more focused. And what I found is I was actually a lot less stressed because, my watch wasn't going off and then my phone was, we just got so much noise in this world. So what
yeah.
did you do to cut the noise out?
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing I do, I wake up in the morning. I don't ever have to actually set an alarm. I just have my natural internal clock that wakes up.
Yeah,
And I don't,
519 for
I
me.
right, yeah, totally. And one of the things I don't do is I don't lay in bed. My eyes open, I wake up, I plant my feet on the ground, and I immediately have a moment of gratitude and say, I'm going to tackle this day, and no matter the challenges that I face, I will overcome them. I will win this day. And every day I do
Love
that.
that.
And every day that I have the opportunity, I get as quickly as I can to sunshine, to light, natural light. So what I really love about Avril McCraven is Make Your Bed, is once I get up,
Good book.
plant my feet, do a moment of gratitude, I make my bed immediately. That's how I started off. And then I do a quick meditation. You've spoken a few times about breathing exercises. Another one that I'll offer is the alternate nair breathing. And so, like box breathing, nair breathing is you plug one side of your nostril, usually your right side, take a nice deep inhale through your left nair, hold it for a few seconds, and then you switch to the left side, and then you exhale through your right side. And you repeat this over and over again. And you can go as long as you want, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. And same thing, it initiates that vagus nerve. It brings you back to center. It relaxes you. And it's just another breathing technique. Obviously, that's not going to work if you got a nose full of snot. So blow your nose. But
Your
it's just
nose or
another
just
tool.
switched over to box breathing. But I mean, I literally just did
Yeah.
it. I think we both did it as we were talking about because we cannot not. It's like a paramedic walking by an airway medic with a blade out.
Right.
I'm gonna innovate that patient. But
Yep.
no, like I just did it, and I physiologically can feel my heart rate go down because I get excited when I do these episodes. I get pumped. I feed off of the energy because it's just I know it's almost cathartic for me at the same time. But just by doing that one breath, man, I could feel my heart rate come down. I got a little bit more recentered and repurposed, man. People, this stuff works. It's not magic. It's not voodoo. It really does work. And if you do it and incorporate, I love how you do it in the morning because I'm a morning person too. My wife, not so much. Her feet are not moving unless you give her
Yeah.
coffee and say thank you. And, but for me, as soon as my eyes open, it's like, okay, I got this to do. I'm after my day. I'm dedicated to that. But before I do anything, I do something very similar, be appreciative. What am I
Yep.
appreciative for? I go through
Yep.
my daily routine, do my daily reading before I even get out of bed. That way it's like, it's one of those things that's forefront. What was the read of the
Yep.
day? Kindness, happiness, character defects, anger, fear, whatever. But it allows me every morning to apply a new concept to my life. And sometimes I've done that day in, day out, same concept. Um, but it's nice to get a step and a routine to work after to really build this kind of, this grit attitude that you're talking about, right? I got to build that. It's not something that just some people just don't have that. They didn't play sports or inherently how I got it. Just grit's there. There's some people just want to give up and some people want to fight. So, getting up and adopting a no excuse mindset as you get up out of
Yep.
bed. And I like how you do it. Like, I'm thankful, right? Giving back thanks, being appreciative. Hey, these are the miracles I do have. And I'm going to start my day off on a positive note versus, let's reverse that and play the reverse psychology to a degree, knock on wood. But hey, I get in my head, oh man, I got all these projects that are due. I'm overwhelmed. I'm behind on my finances, whatever that looks like. You can already see how that negative self talk gets in your head and it just totally destroys and sabotages your day. Versus if you flip that, like you're talking about, Rob, is get after it, be thankful, take positive, and that, depending on what challenges come out throughout your day, you're gonna, no matter what, you're gonna be okay. Do you have
Yep.
a roof over your head? You got food? You got a blanket? You're doing pretty good compared to a lot of
Yeah.
people. So
Yeah. Yeah. And what I would really challenge people to do is when you start your morning routine, don't grab for your phone. Don't go scrolling. Do not get on social media just to see what the world is, what's happening with the world. Don't go to the news.
nobody cared about
Um,
you while you were sleeping. Trust me. You just get
Nobody.
used to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said it before. Nobody's coming for us, right? We have to look out for ourselves. And one of the most valuable lessons I learned early on, that my dad told me when I was 11, 12 years old, he goes, you got to understand one thing. He goes, nobody cares about you. So you got to always be your own self advocate. And I knew what he meant by that. Of course, my family loves me. They care for me. He goes, but the world could care less about you. So always look out for yourself and make sure you're taking care of business. And he, it was interesting because he had me reading Stephen Covey when I was 11 and 12 years old. The Road Less Travel by Peck,
That's a good
Seven
book. I don't think I
Habits,
read that until
and
like 2 years ago.
yeah, right, yeah, and so it's this created a lot of the foundation for me. But you got to inject good material into your brain first thing in the morning that sets your full day up for success, and it takes practice. It just takes practice and commitment to do it every single day. And I'm telling you, it works. At first, I was skeptical. I didn't believe it. I said, all right, what is the actual mind, body, spirit connection? And does it really exist? And as I've gone through the journey, it's real. And it's so important to find a way to utilize that and recognize it, to move forward. Because the one thing we don't want to do is we don't want to be a victim. We don't want to blame others. We need to take full accountability for our actions and keep striving to keep moving forward progress. And once you can get out of that no excuse, no victim mentality, you're going to succeed. Your life will get exponentially better. It's just it's an awesome thing to feel and witness and live by.
Here, I'll leave, you mentioned bringing up, some tools and things like that. I always like to try to leave people some actionable items like, hey,
Yep.
great. Thank you guys for listening. And by the way, if you haven't, make sure you guys click that subscribe, that like, share with your friends and family. This is the only way we get these messages out to other people. But, I'll leave you with these tips. I read a book called Habit Stacking. Great book. I can't remember who the author was off the top of my head. But it's very similar to what you've just said. So you guys want a good tool on how you can start with a good morning routine, and just start small. Start with a good morning routine. You can incorporate and add more stuff into it. But hey, your alarm goes off or you wake up, your eyes open. Like Rob said, first thing I do, I just roll out of bed. I don't even think about it. I just roll, right? Because then that sets up the next habit. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, hey, these are the 3 things I'm really appreciative for, I'm thankful for, whatever that looks like. Then that's going to lead to the next thing. As soon as I get done with that, I'm going to do my daily reading. And you see by how just doing those 3 steps, those habits, so we stack these habits together and bring them all together. But at the same time, you can add more to that. You can take some away, but it becomes easier to the point where exactly, like your body physically knows exactly what it needs. It's just like, hey, as I get the hunger for food in the morning, my brain gets the hunger for, hey, I want some positivity. I need some good energy. I want to be some, I want to do some great stuff today. So let's get in that mindset. And how do you set yourself up with that? Some good habit stacking techniques. If you're one of those people that are like, hey, I kind of, it takes me a minute to kind of get going in the morning, or I typically shy away from challenges or fear, things like that, new projects, things that seem overwhelming. Try to figure out a way to tackle that through habit stacking and figuring out ways that you can basically say, hey, if this happens, I'm going to do this. It's just like, hey, if I see a piece of trash at the floor, I'm going to go pick it up and put it in the garbage can. That's just my habit. And if I do a couple more of those and stack them together, before you know it, I got a pretty good routine. And I might be finding myself a little bit every day easier, lighter, feeling great, feeling ready, feeling pumped, and going out there and smashing the shit out of the stigma and what's in front of me. And that's where people really start getting that that confidence. I used to call it clinical confidence while I was teaching critical care, because if someone knows what they're doing and how to achieve or overcome something, just the energy alone, the power alone that they bring to that is just, there's no measure for it, right? I've been in the back of an ambulance or first in on a structure where you're just scared out of your mind. But when you have that confidence to wake up in the morning and go, hey, I got today, I'm going to crush it. I got the tools. I flipped my switch. Let's get after it. That really does change. And you can't do things the way we've always done them. If you keep doing things the way you've always done them, guess what? That's dogma. You ain't getting anything done. So you have to interject some of these new habits into your routine if you want to see any changes. Otherwise, you're just setting yourself up for false expectations, folks. Rob, do you have anything else? I mean, this has been such an inspiring conversation, but what would you like to leave our listeners and our viewers with? Do you have any last wisdoms of pearls or things like that you'd like to share as we kind of wrap up today's episode?
Yeah, I definitely do. So I'll just give you the steps to what I feel is a good way to identify purpose. So create a personal vision statement. We've spoken a little bit about it, or other previous podcasts. Pen to paper, type it down, write stuff down, journal. It is transformational. Create a personal vision statement. My personal vision statement is being the best version of myself with unwavering commitment to hard work, discipline, and consistency so that I can inspire others to be their best version. Practice gratitude. Transform your pain into purpose. Identify your passions and interests. Be a part of a community. That is critical. Surround yourself by quality people. You are the sum of the 5 closest people you hang around with. That is one of my favorites that I've heard through my reading. You also have to read a lot of good material. Knowledge is, it's endless. There's so much good stuff out there, whether you read it physically, do an Audible book, and then self-care. Kind of in closing, one of the things that I want to everybody to know is to understand and remember that the truest sense of purpose is often found not in the grand gestures, but in the quiet moments of self-reflection and the small victories won within the confines of our own mind. Okay, we're all in this together. As hard as it may be, every time you wake up in the morning, the world is giving you another opportunity to heal, another opportunity to seek fulfillment, another opportunity to be great. So I ask you this: how do you want to be remembered? What is your why? Because I promise you, you have it within you. Okay, you just have to discover it. It's not going to be easy. We believe in you. We're a family. We're the community. We're here for you, our brothers and sisters, and we care about you truly and deeply, and we want to be there to help you. Don't be afraid to ask for help. You got a family next to your side all the time. And that's my closing message. And lastly, focus on what you can control. That is critical. Focus on what you can control. Everything else is noise.
Well, Rob, thank you so much for those insights and those pearls. I would agree, try to let go of the things that you cannot change. I can't change people, places, things, or events. I have no control over them. And for me to expend any time or energy on trying to control those or alter those is it's time wasted when I can spend my time growing myself, reading books, and really enlighten myself and setting myself up just for a better day and feeling better about myself and who I am and the joy. And I love how you bring your purpose and your mission in this world and are helping it for the good of others by sharing your story, your ideas, some of the books that you've read. Like, that's why we love having these conversations, these critical conversations. There's no more critical moment in my mind as we continue to see the suicide rates climb. The amount and percentages of people struggling on a day-to-day basis. It's hard to watch, but we can choose to do something, folks. You could choose every morning to roll out of bed, put your feet firmly planted on the ground, and get after it. Be thankful for some things. Practice box breathing, take care of yourself, self-care. All of this comes together in order to form a better, more purposeful you. And Rob, thank you so much for bringing your purpose to the world. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad that our lives have crossed paths. And just some of the small things that you've mentioned, I'm like, wow, I've had very similar experiences, or I'm doing very similar things, and it's crazy because I wouldn't have known about that if I hadn't connected with you. And so I would also encourage a lot of people out there, try not to self-isolate. If you feel alone, if you feel down, I would highly encourage, get out, go to a movie, go to Topgolf, get out and do something and just be around other humans. They don't have to be first responders. Just feel that sunshine on your cheek. It does get easier. We continue to eat this elephant, all of us together, because we are taking care of ourselves. We've decided that we're no longer going to die in silence and not have people really understand what leads and what they can do to better themselves to prevent these things from occurring. And so with that, Rob, thank you so much for being a guest on today's show of Mind the Frontline's Critical Care Podcast. For all of you guys out there, let's continue to have these critical conversations and work towards building a better, stronger, more resilient first responder community that has a daily purpose. I love the fact that you brought up the mission statement. What is your mission statement? Start with that. Write that down after you get off of listening from this show. And until next time, take care, stay strong, and mind the front line.
To our dedicated listeners, thank you again for joining us on this critical journey. Remember, the Critical Conversations podcast is a steadfast resource for police, fire, EMS, allied healthcare workers, dispatchers, air medical, and military personnel, along with their families. Your support makes the impact of these conversations resonate even further. If you found today's discussion enlightening and want to stay connected with our ongoing mission, please be sure to subscribe to the Critical Conversations podcast. You can find us via Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and the Mind the Frontline website. Your subscription ensures that you will never miss an episode, and it's a powerful way to show your commitment to fostering resilience within the entire first responder community. For more information and additional resources, visit our website at www.mindthefrontline.org. Together, let's continue these critical conversations and build a stronger, more resilient first responder family. We thank you for being a part of the Critical Conversations podcast. Until next time, take care, stay strong, and mind the front line.